I came home from deployment 3 weeks early. My daughter wasn't home. My wife said she's at her mother's. I drove to Aurora. Sophie was in the guest cottage, locked in, freezing, crying. Grandmother said disobedient girls need correction. It was midnight. 4 gradi centigrado. 12 hours alone. I broke her out. She whispered, "Dad, don't look in the filing cabinet." What I found in there was... I killed the engine and sat there in the driveway, letting the silence wash over me. 3 weeks early, the wildfire season had ended abruptly when the rains came, and they'd sent us home from British Columbia ahead of schedule. 23 years with Toronto Fire Services, the last 8 doing wildfire deployments, and I'd never gotten back early before. The house was dark, almost midnight. I'd driven straight through from Kamloops, 11 hours, wanting to surprise Rebecca and Sophie. My daughter would be asleep, but maybe my wife would still be up reading in bed like she always did when I was away. I grabbed my duffel from the truck bed and walked to the front door. The porch light was off. Strange. Rebecca always left it on when I was deployed. I fumbled with my keys in the darkness. The door was unlocked. My training kicked in immediately. I set down the duffel quietly and pushed the door open slowly. The house smelled wrong. Not bad, just unused, like no one had been home in days. The living room was pristine. Too pristine. Rebecca wasn't the tidiest person, and with an 11-year-old there were usually shoes by the door. Sophie's homework spread on the coffee table. Something. Nothing. I walked down the hallway to Sophie's room. The door was open. Her bed was made with hospital corners, the stuffed animals arranged in a perfect line. Sophie never made her bed. I made her do it every weekend before I left for deployments. But by Monday morning, it was always a disaster again. This bed hadn't been slept in for days. My heart rate picked up. I checked our bedroom. Empty. Bed made. Rebecca's phone charger was missing from the nightstand. Her slippers were gone from beside the bed. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice groggy and confused. "David, what's wrong? Where are you?" There was a pause. Too long. "What do you mean?" "It's midnight." "I'm home, Becca. I'm standing in our bedroom and you're not here. Where are you?" "Where's Sophie?" "You're home, but you're not supposed to be back until early release. The fires are out. Where are you?" Another pause. I could hear her moving. Fabric rustling. "I'm at my mother's. Sophie's here too. We've been staying here for the past week. Why?" "It's complicated." "David, can we talk about this tomorrow?" "It's late." "And what time did you put Sophie to bed?" "Around 9. "Why?" "I'm coming there right now." "David, no. Please just stay home tonight, and we'll talk in the round." I hung up. Something was very wrong. Rebecca's mother, Patricia, lived in Aurora about 45 minutes north. Rebecca couldn't stand her mother. They'd barely spoken since Sophie was born. Patricia was controlling, manipulative, and had never forgiven Rebecca for marrying a firefighter instead of the corporate lawyer she'd picked out. Why would Rebecca spend a week at her mother's house? I got back in the truck and drove. The roads were empty at this hour. I made it in 38 minutes. Patricia's house was a sprawling property on the edge of Aurora, backing onto conservation land. Old money. Her late husband had been a surgeon. The house was dark except for a single light in an upstairs window. I parked on the street and walked up the long driveway. The front door was locked this time. I rang the bell. Nothing. I rang again, holding it down. A light came on in the entryway. Rebecca opened the door, wearing a robe, her hair disheveled. She looked thin, too thin. Dark circles under her eyes. "David, what are you doing?" "It's almost 1 in the morning. I want to see Sophie. She's asleep. You can see her in the..." I pushed past her into the house. "Sophie?" I called out. "David, stop. You're going to wake my mother." "I don't give a damn about your mother, Sophie." Rebecca grabbed my arm. There was panic in her eyes. Real fear. "Please. Please don't do this. Not now." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She'd lost weight. Her hands were shaking and her eyes. God. Her eyes looked haunted. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. Before she could answer, Patricia appeared at the top of the stairs. 72 years old, rail thin, white hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was fully dressed despite the hour. Slacks, a cardigan, pearls, David, what an unexpected surprise. Where's my daughter? Sophie is perfectly fine. She's sleeping in the guest cottage out back. I thought it would be good for her to have her own space. She's at such an important age. You know, independence is crucial. The guest cottage, a converted barn about 100 meters behind the main house. I'd been there once years ago. It was freezing in winter. I headed for the back door. David, wait. Rebecca started. Patricia's voice was sharp. Rebecca, let him go. If he wants to disturb Sophie's sleep and upset her, that's his choice. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and went out the back door. The temperature had dropped, maybe 4 degrees Celsius. I could see my breath. The cottage was completely dark. I crossed the lawn, my boots crunching on frost. The cottage door was padlocked from the outside. Padlocked. I yanked on it. Sophie, it's Dad. Nothing. Sophie, honey, can you hear me? I heard something. A small sound. Then my daughter's voice, weak and hoarse. Dad. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Dad. I'm so cold. I tried the padlock again. It was solid. I looked around desperately and spotted the wood pile. I grabbed a splitting maul and swung it at the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. It broke. I threw open the door. The cottage was a single room, maybe 4 by 6 meters. There was no furniture, no heat, no light. In the corner, curled up on a bare mattress on the floor, was Sophie. She was wearing her pajamas. Nothing else, no blanket, no pillow. I rushed to her and scooped her up. She was ice cold, shivering violently. I unzipped my jacket and wrapped her inside against my chest. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you. You're safe now. She was crying, not sobbing, just tears running silently down her face. I tried to be good. Dad, I really tried. But grandmother said I had too much spirit. She said disobedient girls need correction. How long have you been out here? Since yesterday morning. She took my blanket away the day before that. She said comfort makes children weak. I felt something break inside me. A cold, terrible rage that was worse than any fire I'd ever faced. I carried Sophie back toward the house. Patricia was standing on the porch, Rebecca beside her. Put her in my truck, I told Rebecca. Turn on the heat, wrap her in the emergency blanket behind the seat. Rebecca moved immediately, taking Sophie from my arms. Our daughter clung to her mother for a moment, then let go without a word. Rebecca's hands were shaking as she carried Sophie away. I turned to Patricia. What have you done? She smiled. Actually smiled. I've been teaching your daughter the discipline her mother failed to instill. Rebecca was always too soft, too emotional. It's why she made such poor choices. Sophie was heading down the same path. She's 11 years old, the perfect age for correction. Any older, and the damage is permanent. I've been consulting with an expert, Dr. Martin Reeves, a child behaviorist. He runs a program for difficult children. Sophie would be an excellent candidate. You locked my daughter in an unheated room in November for 12 hours. Hardly enough to cause harm. Dr. Reeves recommends isolation periods of up to 72 hours for truly defiant children. I was being quite lenient. I took a step toward her. She didn't flinch. If you ever touch my daughter again, if you ever even speak to her again, I will. You'll what, David? I'm her grandmother. I have rights. And Rebecca brought Sophie here voluntarily. She signed the consent forms for Dr. Reeves' program. I turned and looked at my wife standing by my truck with Sophie. Even in the darkness, I could see the guilt on her face. Patricia continued, her voice calm and measured. Rebecca understands that sometimes a mother must make difficult choices for her child's own good. Sophie was becoming rebellious, talking back, questioning authority. These are symptoms of a larger problem. Dr. Reeves has a facility where children can receive the intensive intervention they need. Over my dead body. You're deployed 8 months of the year, David. You have no idea what Rebecca deals with. She's drowning, and I've thrown her a lifeline. The program costs $32,000 annually, but I'm paying for it. All Rebecca has to do is sign. I looked at Patricia for a long moment. Then I walked to my truck. Sophie was wrapped in the silver emergency blanket, her teeth still chattering. Rebecca was sitting in the back seat with her, tears streaming down her face. Get out, I told her. David, please get out of my truck. Rebecca climbed out. I got in the driver's seat, locked the doors, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see Rebecca standing in the driveway, illuminated by the porch light. She was on her knees. I took Sophie to the hospital. They admitted her for observation, treating her for mild hypothermia and dehydration. A social worker came. I told them everything. They called the police. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but frank. We can investigate. But if your wife consented to the grandmother providing care and there's no evidence of physical abuse beyond the isolation, she was locked in a freezing room for 12 hours. I understand and will document everything. But you should prepare yourself. These cases are complicated when there's a custody dispute. There's no dispute. Sophie is my daughter and your wife's. If she authorized this treatment, things get murky. I sat by Sophie's hospital bed all night. She slept fitfully, occasionally crying out. The nurses said that was normal for mild hypothermia. I wasn't sure if it was the cold or the trauma. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Rebecca, I answered. David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would lock our daughter in an unheated room. What exactly did you think was going to happen when you signed Sophie up for this program? It's not like that. Dr. Reeves' program is legitimate. He's a licensed psychologist. The facility is accredited. It's for children with behavioral issues. Sophie doesn't have behavioral issues. She's been difficult lately. Mouthy, refusing to do homework. Your mother said my mother. Patricia is not my mother. She's yours, and she's insane. Silence. How long has this been going on? I asked. My mother reached out about 6 months ago. She said she'd been researching programs for troubled youth. She sent me articles, studies, Dr. Reeves' credentials. She said if we intervened now, we could prevent Sophie from making the same mistakes I did. What mistakes? Getting pregnant at 23. Marrying someone my mother didn't approve of. Giving up my career to be a stay-at-home mother. I closed my eyes. You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore, David. You're gone all the time. I'm alone with Sophie, and she's getting harder to manage. When my mother offered to help when she said she'd pay for the program, how much has she paid you? Another silence. Rebecca, how much? $32,000 so far. She's been sending me monthly payments. The program was supposed to start in January, but my mother wanted Sophie to do some preliminary sessions first. She said, Dr. Reeves recommended it, and the preliminary sessions involved locking her in an unheated cottage. No, my mother said they were just counseling sessions, an hour a day. I didn't know about the cottage until last night. When Sophie didn't come in for dinner, I went looking for her and found her locked out there. I was going to let her out. I swear. But my mother said it was part of the treatment that I had to trust the process. And you believed her. She's my mother, David. She's never. Rebecca's voice broke. I thought she was trying to help. I looked at Sophie, still sleeping fitfully in the hospital bed. 11 years old. She looked so small. I want a divorce. I said, what? No, David, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can. You sold our daughter to your mother for $32,000. I didn't sell her. I was trying to get help. She was locked in a freezing room, Rebecca. 12 hours. She has mild hypothermia. She's traumatized. And you knew you found her last night and you left her there. My mother said, I don't care what your mother said. I was shouting now. And a nurse looked in through the door. I lowered my voice. You're her parent. You're supposed to protect her. I hung up. Sophie woke up around 8. The doctor came in and examined her. She was stable. They'd release her after lunch if her temperature stayed normal. Dad, Sophie's voice was small. Yeah, honey. Is Mom coming? I don't know. I don't want to see her. Or grandmother. You don't have to. She was quiet for a while. Then there's something else. What is it? In grandmother's house. In her office, there's a filing cabinet. I saw it when I went to use the bathroom once. It has files. Lots of files with names on them. What kind of names? Other kids' names. I recognized some from school and there were photos. I felt my blood go cold. What kind of photos? Kids crying in rooms like the cottage, and there were dates and times written on them like records. I called the police back. The same officer came to the hospital. Mr. Winters, I understand you're upset, but we can't search someone's property based on what an 11-year-old saw in a filing cabinet. She's keeping records, photos of children. This isn't just my daughter. Did Sophie say the children in the photos looked injured? Were they being actively harmed? They were crying. That's not enough for a warrant. Look, I'll file a report. If there's a pattern of complaints against Patricia Morrison, or this Dr. Reeves, It'll help build a case. But right now, we don't have probable cause. After he left, I sat there thinking. Then I called an old friend from the fire department who'd retired and become a private investigator. Malcolm showed up at the hospital 2 hours later, 68 years old, built like a bear, still sharp as hell. "Tell me everything," he said. I did. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "I've heard of Dr. Martin Reeves. There have been complaints. Nothing that stuck but rumors. Rich families sending their kids to his facility for behavioral correction. Some of those kids came back different, quiet, submissive. A few never came back at all." "What do you mean never came back officially?" "They ran away or got moved to other programs, or the family sent them to boarding schools abroad. But there's been talk. Nothing provable. I need to know what's in that filing cabinet." Malcolm looked at me for a long moment. "What you're asking me to do is illegal." "I know. If we find something, it might not be admissible in court." "I don't care about court. I care about stopping this." He nodded. "I'll need a few days to set it up." "Can you keep Sophie safe until then?" "Yes." Malcolm left. Sophie was discharged that afternoon. I took her home. Our home, not Rebecca's mother's house. Rebecca called 47 times that first day. I didn't answer. On the second day, she showed up at the house. I didn't let her in. On the third day, Malcolm called. "I'm in," he said. "Patricia's out of town. Left this morning, flew to Montreal. I'm in her office now. David, you need to see this. I can't leave Sophie. Is there someone you trust?" I called my sister. Jennifer came over within the hour, bringing her 2 kids as a distraction for Sophie. I told her I had to run an errand. I drove to Aurora. Malcolm had picked the back door lock. The house was silent and dark. He led me to Patricia's office, a wood-paneled room with built-in bookshelves and an antique desk. The filing cabinet was against the wall. Malcolm had already picked the lock. There were 47 files, 47 children. Each file contained photos, medical records, behavioral reports. The photos made me sick. Children in isolation rooms. Children crying. Children who looked broken. Some of the files had notes in Patricia's handwriting. Transferred to facility, level 3 intensive, non-responsive to standard methods. Recommend advanced intervention. Family withdrew. Insufficient commitment to process. But it was the last drawer that made me understand the full scope. Financial records. Patricia wasn't just sending children to Dr. Reeves' program. She was recruiting for it, getting paid a finder fee for each family she brought in. $3,500 per child enrolled, and there was correspondence. Emails between Patricia and Dr. Reeves discussing difficult cases and non-compliant children who required permanent solutions. One email made my hands shake. "The Morrison girl shows promise, high intelligence, strong will. These traits are valuable. If the family proves uncooperative, she could be redirected to the alternative program. Our overseas partners are particularly interested in English-speaking girls aged 10 to 12. Malcolm was reading over my shoulder. "Jesus Christ. We need to call the police now. We can't. This was an illegal search. None of this is admissible. Then what do we do?" Malcolm thought for a moment. "We photograph everything. Every page, every file. Then we put it all back exactly as we found it, and we find someone who can get a warrant legally. We spent 3 hours photographing. Every document, every photo, every email. Malcolm had a high-resolution camera and worked methodically. When we were done, we put everything back. Malcolm locked the filing cabinet and the back door. We left no trace we'd been there. In my truck, Malcolm made a call. "Janet, it's Malcolm Pierce. I need a favor." "Yes, the big kind. I have information about child trafficking, potential dozens of victims. I can't tell you how I got it, but I can point you in the right direction tomorrow." "Perfect." He hung up and looked at me. Janet Kwan, investigative journalist. She's done 3 major exposés on child abuse networks. If anyone can get this story out without burning the evidence, it's her. We met Janet the next morning at a Tim Hortons in Newmarket. I brought printed copies of the photos Malcolm had taken. I'd been up all night organizing them, creating a timeline. Janet was in her 42nds, Korean-Canadian with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked through the files without speaking, her expression growing darker with each page. Finally, she looked up. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" Malcolm asked. "If I'm going to burn my career on this story, I need to know it's real, that it'll hold up." I told her everything. Sophie in the cottage, Rebecca's complicity, Patricia's recruiting, Dr. Reeves's program. I'll need to verify everything independently, Janet said. Talk to other families, get official records. This is a months-long investigation. We don't have months, I said. There are children in that facility right now. Then we do both. I publish a preliminary piece to force the authorities to act, and I continue investigating for the full expose. She looked at Malcolm. I'll need your photos as background. I can't use them as evidence, but I can use them to know where to dig. They're yours, Malcolm said. Janet published her first article 3 days later. It was careful, sourced, and devastating. She tracked down 6 families who'd enrolled children in Dr. Reeves' program. 3 families spoke on record about their regrets. Their children had come back different, traumatized. One 14-year-old boy had attempted suicide twice since leaving the facility. The article named Patricia Morrison as a recruiter and quoted from emails Janet had obtained through a Freedom of Information request to Dr. Reeves's licensing board. The response was immediate. The College of Psychologists of Ontario launched an investigation into Dr. Reeves. The Aurora Police Department, embarrassed by the media attention, finally got a warrant to search Patricia's house. They found the filing cabinet. All 47 files, the photos, the financial records, the emails about the alternative program. Dr. Reeves' facility was raided 2 days later. They found 31 children. 8 were from Ontario, the rest from across Canada and the United States. Conditions at the facility were horrific. Isolation cells, insufficient food, systematic psychological abuse. 3 children were missing. The record suggested they'd been transferred to partner facilities overseas. Interpol got involved. Patricia was arrested and charged with child endangerment, conspiracy to traffic children, and fraud. Bail was set at $500,000. She made it in 6 hours. Dr. Reeves fled the country. Last I heard, he was in Costa Rica fighting extradition. Rebecca called me the night Patricia was arrested. I didn't know, she said. David, I swear I didn't know about the trafficking. I thought it was a behavioral program. You knew about the cottage. She told me it was isolation therapy, that it was standard practice, that I was being overprotective if I objected. And you believed her. She's my mother. She's a pillar of the community. She volunteers at the hospital. She's on the library board. How was I supposed to know? You could have trusted your own judgment. You could have protected our daughter. I was trying to protect her from herself, from making my mistakes. What mistakes, Rebecca? You have a good life, a family, a home. A life my mother never approved of. She told me every day that I was wasting my potential, that I'd trapped myself, that Sophie was showing the same defiant streak and needed correction before it was too late. So, you let her abuse our daughter. Silence. I want Sophie back, Rebecca said quietly. No, she's my daughter too. You gave up that right when you left her in that cottage. David, please. I'll do anything. Therapy, divorce my mother, testify against her, anything. It's too late. I hung up. The divorce took 8 months. Rebecca fought for joint custody. I fought for sole custody. The judge reviewed everything. The hospital records, the police reports, Janet's articles, Rebecca's admission, that she'd known Sophie was in the cottage and left her there. The judge ruled in my favor. Full custody to me. Rebecca got supervised visitation 2 hours every Sunday at a family center. Patricia's trial was set for the following year. Janet continued investigating. She found 2 of the 3 missing children. They'd been recovered in Thailand, being held at a facility that fronted as an international school. The children were traumatized but alive. The 3rd child, a 9-year-old boy named Caleb, was never found. Janet published her full expose 9 months after her first article. It won awards. More importantly, it sparked a nationwide audit of private behavioral facilities. 12 were shut down. 47 children were removed from dangerous situations. Sophie started therapy. It was slow. She had nightmares. She was afraid of the dark. She didn't want to be alone. But she was resilient. Kids are sometimes in ways that break your heart. A year after I found her in that cottage, Sophie asked if she could talk to her mother outside the supervised visits. Are you sure? I asked. I think so. My therapist says it might help. We met at a park. Neutral ground. Rebecca brought a photo album. Pictures of Sophie as a baby, as a toddler at her first day of school. I want you to know that I loved you. Rebecca said that I still love you. What I did was wrong. I was weak and scared, and I let my mother manipulate me. But that's not an excuse. I should have protected you. Sophie listened without speaking. I don't expect you to forgive me, Rebecca continued. But I want you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You weren't a bad kid. You were never a bad kid. You were perfect, and I failed you. Sophie looked at her mother for a long moment. Then she said, "Thank you for saying that." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Patricia went to trial 14 months after her arrest. The prosecution had mountains of evidence. The files, the photos, the financial records, testimony from families, testimony from the children recovered from the facility. Her defense argued that she'd believed Dr. Reeves' program was legitimate, that she'd been deceived as much as the families she'd recruited. The jury didn't buy it. She was convicted on 23 counts of child endangerment, 6 counts of conspiracy to traffic minors, and 14 counts of fraud. The judge sentenced her to 37 years in federal prison. She was 73 years old. She'd likely die there. I felt nothing when I heard the verdict. Not satisfaction, not anger, just empty. Sophie had a different reaction. She cried, not because she felt sorry for her grandmother, but because it was finally over. Dr. Reeves was eventually extradited and tried separately. He got 45 years. His facility's board of directors were each sentenced to between 8 and 20 years. The 3 administrators who'd actually run the day-to-day abuse got life sentences. Rebecca and I never reconciled. She moved to Vancouver, getting as far from her mother and the scandal as possible. She still sees Sophie every few months, flying back for court-approved visits. Their relationship is cordial but distant. Sophie calls her Rebecca now, not Mom. 5 years after that night, I came home early from deployment. Janet published a follow-up piece. The children from Dr. Reeves' facility were all in therapy. Some were doing well. Some were still struggling. Caleb was still missing. But the investigation had led to the shutdown of 17 similar facilities across Canada and the United States. Hundreds of children had been removed from abusive situations. Sophie, now 16, was thriving. She'd started a blog about her experience helping other kids who'd survived institutional abuse. She wanted to study psychology in university. To help kids like me, she said, so they don't have to go through what I did. I looked at my daughter, so strong and brave despite everything, and felt my chest tighten with pride. Your grandmother used to say that comfort makes children weak. I told her she was wrong. Love makes them strong, and you're the strongest person I know. Sophie hugged me. Thanks, Dad. For what? For coming home early. I think about that night a lot. What would have happened if the fires hadn't ended early? If I'd come back on schedule 3 weeks later, would Rebecca have already signed Sophie over to the program? Would my daughter have disappeared into that system? Would I have ever seen her again? I can't think about it too much or I'll go insane. Instead, I focus on what did happen. I came home, I found her, I saved her. And she saved herself by being brave enough to tell me about that filing cabinet. Sometimes I wonder if Patricia ever feels remorse. If she lies awake in her cell thinking about the children she hurt, the lives she destroyed. I doubt it. People like that don't feel remorse. They feel victimized by the consequences of their own actions. But Sophie feels hope, and that's what matters. Last month, on the anniversary of that night, Sophie and I drove back to Aurora, not to Patricia's house, which had been sold to pay her legal fees, but to the conservation land behind it. We planted a tree, a white oak. It'll live for 300 years if it's cared for properly. For Caleb, Sophie said. And for all the kids who didn't make it, we stood there for a while, watching the wind move through the bare branches. Then we went home.